Hi there, Liam O'Gogan here from the research project Does It Matter? Just a little episode of reflection. Yesterday evening, one of those rather seldom beautiful evenings here in West Donegal, I went for a walk down to the local shoreline, which as you see here is absolutely beautiful. But I was there somewhere to recover and re-nurture myself from some of the tense and stressful earlier conversations which I'm about to set down on record now, one particularly with John Keyes, who is Assistant Commissioner and Head of Investigations in the Data Protections Office. And I was just thinking about the paradox that faces me about trying to protect a piece of evidence that I've put into the public domain which exposes unacceptable, unprofessional breach of personal data by the Central Statistics Office in the middle of the census campaign in 2016, and the pressure I'm being put under to eradicate that evidence, and my valid concerns that this will then be brushed under the carpet and swept aside. And what came into my mind was this idea of a line in the sand. So I came back and I said, I must drag that up and see if I can look up some online history about it. And obviously it comes from the Ray Burke era. And I've just picked up a couple of YouTube videos to give us some link into what we're looking at here. So we're back here in May 1998 in the Dáil, with Ray Burke having resigned some 7 months or so earlier.
Indeed, Dermot Ahern emphasised this when he spoke to the Dáil a month later.
Ray Burke. To the best of my knowledge, at the time of the appointment of Mr. Burke, the Taoiseach, having made all due inquiries which he could reasonably have made, had discovered no proof whatsoever that any payment, improper or otherwise, had been made to Mr. Burke at that time.
Okay, so now we need to move on to another section.
Indeed, on the day of his resignation a month later, Bertie Ahern said this.
In the case of Deputy Ray Burke, I see a much more sinister development, the persisting hounding on an honourable man to resign his important position on the basis of innuendo and unproven allegations. Some who would class themselves as protectors of basic civil rights have harried and hounded this man without according him the basic right of due process.
I'm very interested in there is the hounding of a decent and honourable man and the failure to give him due process, that mixture of sympathetic emotion and this hard concept of due process. So let's hear what Ray Burke then said.
As he was concerned, he'd answered all the questions and the issue was now behind him.
I made a 20-minute speech and I made myself unprecedented in the history of this state. As a member of the House, I made myself available for questions from members for an hour on any issue they wanted to ask. As far as I'm concerned, that's a line in the sand. To now, I have to get on with the job that the Taoiseach gave me, that is to build on the peace process, to get into the substantive negotiations. Whatever allegations, whatever cranks, whoever comes out of the woodwork, whatever comes out of the woodwork from now on, the line is in the sand. As far as I'm concerned, from this day on is D-Day. I move on to peace process, to United Nations.
Okay, you'll see that there, the date there was September 1997. So I knew this was in the back of my mind in terms of how I interpret it. I interpret him as saying, I've drawn a line in the sand. We can't go back there to investigate or interrogate any further. That's the point of no return. At that point, up to that point, I've made myself absolutely open for interrogation and investigation. You haven't found anything, so don't come back here again. So in relation to my ongoing research in the Does It Matter programme and my interrogation of the activities of public officials and behaviours and due process and all of the rest, I'm really fascinated in the way in which I see a process circling the wagons and trying to obfuscate and draw these lines in the sand and then say we can't go there any further. So I was thinking about, what does this mean, a line in the sand? You know, I have this idea of something that's set in stone or something I can go back to, touch it like Doubting Thomas again, it won't go away again. So I decided that doesn't feel right for me, line in the sand. So I decided to carry out a little experiment and I just videoed this little short clip which I'll just put in here. I've come down to the beach on a beautiful May evening where the tide was coming in over the hot sands, and I've tried to carry out that experiment of the line in the sand concept. And I've tried here to draw a line in the sand, and as you can see, within a couple of short wavelets just coming in and out, this line disappears interminably. And like the legend of King Canute, I'm almost trying to hold back the tide here, trying to re-establish this line in the sand. So for anybody who has fallen for the illusion that this metaphor of a line in the sand is something that we can set down firmly as a point which we can recalibrate looking back and come back to in the future to re-establish what our agreement or a point which you could not pass again has any meaning, it's completely the opposite. In fact, you can see in the setup where Igtilu Isigtra or Cahan Antida law completely obliterates any record of this. One good thing is it was still a beautiful evening here in Wild West Donegal. Okay, that was just a short reflection, just to prove to myself that this line in the sand metaphor is just simple bullshit. That's all that is. You can't put it any other way. And to think that we listen to this stuff in the public and we accept this from our leaders and politicians, this is not critical thinking, folks. So once again, little reflection there on my trying to little break, a beautiful break in Wild West Donegal. Again, look at these beautiful beaches, and only for this I couldn't survive trying to tackle this almost insane inanity of failure to respond by public officials. Anyway, for now, thanks for joining me on the Does It Matter research program. Until the next time, good luck, Liam O'Gogan.